Yeehaw! Welcome to Wednesday.
Yeah. Once again, we're back.
We are
loud
back.
There.
You guys, we love you guys. Thank you for listening to K-Talk Radio. Today, you're listening to, right now, and every Wednesday from 9 to 10, PrepperCon Radio. And we're actually...
The highlight of our week.
This is the highlight of our week. And we're actually going to be rebranding our name to Prepper Talk Radio.
Prepper Talk Radio, yes.
Over the next few weeks. So watch for our updated website and other information on the K-Talk website, which also is getting updated shortly.
Exciting.
So we're stoked. K-Talk's doing some really big things to improve what they're able to get out to the masses as far as news, what kind of resources are available, and we're excited to be part of that and help grow K-Talk. You know, you guys are one of the most loyal and awesome listenerships I've ever come across, so we want to thank you.
Absolutely.
And as a reminder, I am Scott, Mr. PrepperCon, and we're always joined with Shane, the Prepared Guy.
PreparedGuy.com.
Good morning, buddy.
Hey, good morning to you. It's always good to see you on a Wednesday morning. It's sometimes the only times I see you during the week, so it's an absolute pleasure. We need to spend more time together.
Crazy. So, as usual, we are sponsored by Survival Medical. These guys are the only first aid kit designed for long-term storage, and you can find out more about them at survival-medical.com, or, as we've been talking about, watch for them in August at Sam's Club. They're just about to hit the market at Sam's Club, so you can get yours there. We're talking protection today. Not just protection, but let's talk sidearm safety, firearm safety. And we've got, you know what, I'm going to let you introduce him.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring him on.
You're going to do better.
Hello, Rob. Can you hear us? Oh, now we got you turned on. You there, Rob?
Here I am.
All right, awesome. Scott's got you turned up on the mic, and I just want to introduce you to everybody here in the listening audience. This is Rob Pincus. He is with the Personal Defense Network, and hopefully you guys have heard of Rob. He is an absolutely amazing firearms instructor. I mean, what do you call yourself, Rob?
I guess personal defense educator maybe would be the most universal way to look at what I do most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're definitely more than just a firearms trainer. You go around and teach personal classes, group classes to both individuals as well as law enforcement, military. But you also, like you say, you're an educator. You have your network where it is a subscription network and people can go sign up and watch your videos. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit better than I can about what you do?
Yeah, Personal Defense Network is a great place to go to just kind of get a feel for what the companies, the various companies do. And we try to help people get educated in terms of all aspects of safety, security, personal defense, and obviously the use of the tools and introduction to some of the tactics and techniques that go along with the higher levels of personal defense. That's all through Personal Defense Network with a team of contributors from around the world who are all teachers and experts in a variety of areas, whether it's the psychological mindset side, home security, the medical side, or of course, the use of defensive tools or unarmed defense. For ICE Training Company, we obviously certify instructors as well to teach a lot of defensive firearms classes. The primary thing that we do is teach through the use of firearms in defensive counter-ambush situations to people interested in home defense or who carry concealed in the public space. And also we work a lot with the military and law enforcement through ICE Training Company historically, although for the last 5 to 10 years, we really have transitioned to focus a lot more on the personal defense aspect here in the United States as concealed carry and personal accountability for protection has become much more popular and much more part of our everyday lives.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I found you, I guess, several years ago, Rob, and have been a firm follower ever since, and have really adapted my concealed carry and the way my techniques after what you teach. And what I love about what you teach is that it is intuitive. It's natural. It is, I guess you call it your combat focus shooting technique. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the topic we want to talk about today with you. We want to talk about how to properly interact with police because of everything that's been happening. I know that the police are increasingly concerned about their safety, as well as so are we, because more and more people are carrying guns.
Yeah, for sure. The Combat Focus Shooting Program is our flagship program. It's been around for about 15 years now, formally. Started it up in 2003. We kind of needed a brand name for our handgun classes at a facility I was running in Colorado. and really goes back to the mid-'90s. Getting to train with a lot of different people in the industry, a lot of different people in the public sector as well, military and law enforcement instructors, and really sort of falling in with a clique of people who were starting to take advantage of the much greater information that we gained in the 90s through reality-based training, through the ubiquity of high-quality surveillance cameras, and of course law enforcement dash cameras that started showing, and now we have body cameras that show us what really happens in fights. And combining that with a study of psychology, neuroscience, decision-making, advancements in sports science that help us understand how people develop the ability to use complex motor skills under stress, unexpectedly, and without having to focus on the skill set itself, but really take in all the variables around them. And that intuitive nature of working well with the body, working well with the brain, and obviously working well with the physics of modern handguns really is the core that has kept the CFS program evolving for, really 2 decades from its inception. And then now we've got hundreds of instructors teaching the program around the country. And it's great to have those instructors because they get, more and more students and more brains thinking about the problem and pushing us forward, and the program continues to evolve. And, it's great, something I'm really proud of, but it's definitely not just me, scribbling madly at a desk, coming up with things. There's a whole team out there teaching this. People can learn more about that at combatfocusshooting.com.
And another thing I really love about your program is that, like you say, you adapt it, you change it, you modify it according to the things that you learn and your instructors learn, instead of teaching the same old thing year after year, decade after decade.
There's some programs out there that are very solid programs. They're like, the best 1980s stuff that we had. But the fact is that we've learned a lot since then, and we try to evolve and change. And we're not shy about telling our students, we're going to give you the best information we have 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 months from now, maybe 10 minutes from now. If somebody comes up with something good that we hadn't heard before, this will change and evolve.
Absolutely. And you and I need to talk off air. I've got a few thoughts I'd like to share with you. But anyway, we only have about 7-8 minutes left here before you have to take off to teach another class. Where are you at today, Rob?
Today I'm in Central California, so I'm actually teaching at Exeter Gunslingers in Exeter, California.
Very cool.
And we got a great group of people, and a lot of people think California is more of a quote-unquote anti-gun state, but we've got a full class with 85% of them that carry guns regularly outside the home for personal defense. There's a lot of very strong firearms community here looking for training in California, just like the rest of the U.S.
Fantastic. And Rob gave me a book the other day. It's called his Counter Ambush book. We're going to give this away a little bit later on air after you've left us, Rob. We want to take advantage of your entire time here. So let's get into talking about interacting with police while you're armed, because it makes difference that when you're carrying versus when you're not carrying, whether you're driving and you honk at someone and upset someone and you're carrying a firearm, or if you're not carrying a firearm. There's a big difference.
Well, there is. One of the things that I was taught very early on in my law enforcement career is that, every time you interact with someone, there's at least one gun there, right? Because you bring it. It's there on your belt. And when you start carrying a concealed firearm in public, you really have to play by those same rules. You have to remember that you now have a higher level of responsibility to avoid confrontation. So that idea that you're going to, honk at somebody who cuts you off on the highway, I don't think it's probably a great idea to do anyway. I don't know if you're going to really, cause any big life change for that guy, and you may cause a confrontation. And if you cause a confrontation and then you have the firearm on and you get into a situation where you're pinned in, you can't drive away, you can't escape, and you have to use your firearm to defend yourself. But in the aftermath, there are witness statements and other corroborating facts that suggest you started the conflict. Well, you may not be justified in your use of defensive force. And unfortunately, a lot of people interacting in the general public forget that when they're interacting with that law enforcement officer, he has to go into harm's way regularly on a daily basis. He goes into situations where he doesn't know what's about to happen. And really it comes down to very simple, common sense, listen to the officer, be respectful, comply with his orders, whether you're armed or not, but especially when you have that firearm on you. You do anything to alarm that officer, you are cooperative, you're deceitful, you seem to be trying to hide the fact that you have a firearm from them, they're immediately, and I can tell you from both sides of this, they're immediately and rightfully going to start getting suspicious and potentially worried for their own safety.
So let's go through an everyday situation of maybe
let's talk about a traffic
stop. Exactly. Let's talk about what you would do.
Most likely where you're going to interact with a police officer, because
absolutely,
we all know we all speed.
Sure.
It's
So
a recommendation,
I
not a law,
am-
right? That's how we look at it. So
When I get pulled over, it's not a big mystery, right? Like maybe occasionally it is. Like the mystery is, well, where was the officer? Because it probably is that I was speeding, or it is that I rolled through a stop sign, or we all make these mistakes, or we do the calculated risk when we drive around, and every once in a while you get pulled over. So you get pulled over, and the trick is to again be polite, be cooperative, and kind of let it play out. Of course, you're going to be aggravated. Maybe you're embarrassed. Maybe you're frustrated. Maybe you're worried. But at the same time, we need to de-escalate that anxiety in ourselves before the officer even approaches the car. One of the things I suggest is that you sort of, if you can, you angle the car a little bit, especially if you have tinted windows. I've got the wrapped tour truck, so the back windows you can't see through. The side windows are tinted. I put the windows down. Make sure that the officer has the opportunity to see what you're doing, who's in the vehicle. I've got a dog in the vehicle that's been out on tour with me, and she looks like, she's a snuggle dog, but she looks like she could be an aggressive shepherd. So, making sure that the officer knows there's a dog in the car, that put the windows down a little bit, but not enough so that the dog could stick its head out and startle the officer. When I put my hands on the steering wheel, I open my fingers. I point my fingers up towards the top, the roof of the vehicle, so that they realize not only can they see my hands on the steering wheel, but they can see that I'm not concealing anything inside of my palm or in my fingers behind the steering wheel. So hands on the steering wheel, windows open. If it's nighttime, interior light on. And one of the things you want to think about if you're armed is making sure that your license and maybe your concealed carry permit are staged somewhere away from your torso so that you don't have to reach back towards your belt. If you keep your firearm in a glove compartment or something like that, or in a bag, don't have your registration right where the gun is, where you're going to have to both reach towards the gun and towards your insurance card or towards your registration.
Might as well avoid that. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I'm a big fan of whether there's a duty to inform or not. I am a big fan of telling the officer that you're legally armed. I have found from talking to law enforcement officers around the country and really around the world, and from the interactions I've had, both with concealed carry permit holders and talking to them anecdotally about their experiences, and personally what I've experienced as, usually a police officer or at least a reserve officer, but sometimes just being quote unquote a concealed carry permit holder and having guns all around the country, is that when you inform the officer, 99.9 times you're going to get, 99.9% of the time you're going to get a cooperation. You're going to get someone who says, "Oh, okay, I appreciate you telling me that." And then they're going to give you some probably very simple instructions about what they want you to do. Don't reach towards the gun. They're going to ask you where the gun is. They're going to ask you if the gun's loaded. And you're going to get through that traffic stop dealing with the traffic issue very quickly. And the gun is just going to be something in the background that they're going to appreciate you informing them about.
Yeah, like here in Utah, it's not a requirement any longer to disclose that you're carrying, but it is still a good idea.
Absolutely.
And I see you're on the same page as us as well.
I think, number one, first and foremost, the only way for a society to remain a society before moral decay and moral breakdown is for clear communication and openness. And if we are working with law enforcement to eliminate risks, it makes sense to let them know what they're dealing with, because they're letting you know what you're dealing with.
And be sensitive to
wearing it, you can see
exactly.
it. With us, because it's concealed, we need to let them know. We need to let them know, hey, we're on your side. Yes, I may have been speeding, or I may have a light out, or I'll contest it later. But there's always a great way to respond, and that's with kindness, with openness, and with honesty. I think once I got my concealed carry permit and I started carrying, the first thing when I got pulled over is I would roll down the window, put my hands on the steering wheel. But before that, I would pull out my wallet with my concealed carry permit card and my driver's license, and I'd hand it both to the officer and say, "Yes, I am carrying." So that, oh, okay, there you go. But it's not visible. It's still stowed safely away. My wallet's already out, but then they can see, hey, this guy's not going to cause a problem.
Absolutely, I agree. And one thing people have to remember is that law enforcement officers may not approach from the side you think they're going to approach from. There may be two officers.
True.
There may be an officer that you don't even know about in another vehicle that you didn't see the lights, and maybe because of the way the spotlight or the headlights are hitting your vehicle, you can't see them approaching. So,
and Rob, we sure appreciate you coming on. We are out of time. We're going into the next break here. Thanks so much for coming on, and we will definitely have you on another time when you have a little bit more time to speak with us, and we will catch you on the other side of the break. Thank you very much, Rob, for being with us.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Eager with the Liberty Lineup Show.
Welcome back to PrepperCon Radio, which I guess we're going to call it Prepper Talk Radio from now on. But sure nice to have Rob Pincus on. It's absolutely fantastic. We hope to get him back on another time. And of course, going to go into our sponsorship, but this hour is sponsored by Survival Medical, the only first aid kit designed for long-term storage. Find out more at survival-medical.com. And we sure appreciate John for being our sponsor. I think he'll be in studio with us next week again, and he's always a lot of fun to have around. So we want to continue on with the topic of protection. It's our Protect Week, and we want to diversify a little bit into responsible carry, what it means to be responsible. Once you decide to conceal carry, that is quite a responsibility you're taking on for yourself.
Absolutely. And we want to involve you, the listener, into this conversation because everyone has different perspectives on how best to do this. We're not saying what we're saying is the only way. It's one way. Mm-hmm. In fact, we actually have a caller, Jesse, who has a different perspective on how to deal with this. Let's bring Jesse on the phone. Hey, Jesse, you there still?
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We used to have the right to be secure in our persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Unless somebody has a firearm and it's pointing at me, I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of the cop unless he's pointing his gun at me. So why is he afraid of me if I'm not pointing my gun at him? And if I do have a concealed carry permit, I've already proven my innocence to the government that I'm a pretty decent chap. So what's the problem? And if I'm a bad guy, I'm going to lie anyway. And if I'm a good guy, I might still lie just because I hate being molested.
You're not wrong on any of your topics. You're absolutely correct. I guess my opinion, my point on that is times are different. And how no matter how much I would love to say, I'm going to roll my window down an inch, I'm going to slide you a piece of paper and say, you know what, I don't answer questions. Here's my ID. If you've and just resist. No matter how much I would love to do that, there are some cops or I won't say cops, some police who will understand what you're doing, and they totally get it. And there are others that don't. So you have to make your decision as to what you're going to do, what you're willing to deal with the consequences of doing that, whether it's right or wrong. Right, Jesse? Am I wrong?
Well, if you want to survive, I suppose. You take your life into your own hands.
Exactly.
You sound like you're going to make another... Oh, go ahead. You're going to make another comment.
We know the federal government wants to create a national police force. We practically have one already with the DEA, the ATF, the FBI.
Yep.
Local law enforcement bows to their whim before they generally listen to the people that pay their salaries. But it would be a tremendous goodwill gesture if the sheriff would only enforce constitutional laws in his county. Right now there are millions of criminals in California, and just because of the gun laws they passed 2 weeks ago. So when they get pulled over and they haven't disposed of their rights to self-preservation, they don't know if that cop is friend or foe. This is creating a tense situation, perhaps. So it would be amazingly great if the public servants would say, we're not going to take your guns, even though Sacramento told us we're supposed to. You elected me. I was elected sheriff. I will uphold the Constitution, which I swore an oath to. And you can carry whatever you want in my jurisdiction. That would be tremendous. People would love him. He'd probably get elected for life. A lot of problems solved. People would start loving the police again.
I think that you bring up a great point. With law enforcement, the sheriff does have the final authority for that county. Mm-hmm. And I think far too often people think the sheriff doesn't have the authority. And they think, oh, well, the city has the authority. Well, then if it's not the city, then it's the FBI or the DEA, and they push that authority first. The sheriff's office trumps all of that. Mm-hmm. That's the Constitution. That's what we've all been born into.
But those sheriffs have to be willing to step up and stick their necks out.
Exactly. Those sheriffs need to. So here's my recommendation. Only vote in a sheriff that's going to do that.
Amen.
And if you're not voting in a sheriff that's going to do that, move to a county with a sheriff that's doing that. Because those are the only people that give the sheriff the power are the people that live there. And if no one's giving him power, he can't be in power, or she can't be in power. And I think that's so important. You bring up a great point. We need to make sure that our law enforcement is following the law, that they're doing the right thing. and it's not just whatever law gets passed by a bureaucracy, but the law of the land, which is the Constitution. I think you bring up a great point. You know, it is our responsibility as Americans to keep living the American dream, to keep pushing for freedom and liberty. And I think that's why gun possession and gun ownership and safe use of your firearm is vitally part of that. That's why it's the Second Amendment. It wasn't saved to be the 7th or 8th or 9th. The Second Amendment. Number one, we need to be able to speak. Number two, we need to be able to protect ourselves.
The second guarantees the first.
And exactly, the second guarantees the first. So,
and another thing you need to also, Jesse, thank you very much for your call. Sure appreciate you. Great comments. Another thing we need to consider, and this is something I think about every single day as a concealed carrier. I carry all the time, 24/7, at home.
literally 24/7?
Well, no, I don't. I'm not sleeping, but figuratively,
I was gonna
24/7,
say,
wherever I go.
I will plug this. If you were going to carry 24/7, Stealth Gear is the most comfortable holster. I've actually slept in it accidentally.
You're correct, yeah.
But
Let's just sleep on your side, unless you sleep
I've
on
slept
your
on my side
Have you? Okay.
with gun in tow. And that was the only time I've ever been able to do that. And I was like, I woke up and I'm like, wow, that was irresponsible.
Well,
but
it's
I
a
didn't even
holster.
feel it.
It's not terrible.
Still, rolling over on my gun, not a good idea.
Anyway, so what I'm trying to get at is that for responsible concealed carry, you need to make a lot of different decisions, a lot of choices. First of all, okay, I've got to go into FedEx and drop off a package. Am I going to remove my firearm and put it in my vehicle and not take it into FedEx, where it has clearly posted no firearms? You know, to heck with that. You know, a little civil disobedience is what you need to decide whether you're going to be a little civil disobedient or not. Now, if it comes to the post office, where it's a federal crime, okay, yeah, the firearm's coming off when I go into the post office.
Stick to the federal buildings. Don't take your firearm.
Exactly.
You can't even take. You're not even supposed to take your knife in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I went to the IRS building just a few months ago to file my taxes, and I had a pocket knife, a small, tiny pocket knife, and I was like, "Oh, well, is there a cubby or somewhere I can leave this stuff?" And he goes, "No, if you leave it here, we're going to throw it away." I'm like, "Okay." So I go back out to my car, pay another 15-minute, parking fee, and then I go back in. But yeah, you have to make sure you're vigilant on where you're going with your firearms to make sure you're doing things right. If you're in a federal building with your firearm, yes, you're breaking a law. Sorry.
A big law that you probably don't want to break.
Absolutely.
Whereas if, say, okay, there are a lot of churches don't allow handguns. Now you might get a trespassing citation or whatever. You know, you've got to decide what are you willing to risk for the ability to protect yourself.
You are going to have to be okay with those consequences if you're going to make those decisions.
Exactly. So let's go on to. I want to talk a little bit more about this responsible carry. What does it actually mean to responsibly carry? It is a burden. And if you're a concealed carry permit holder and you don't feel that it is a burden, you have a burden of responsibility to carry, then you're probably not taking it seriously enough. Did you have a call?
Absolutely. We do.
Okay.
We have Randy on the line. Let's bring Randy up with us. We've got Randy on the line. Let's bring Randy on with us here. Randy, are you there?
You got him turned up there?
Yep, he's turned on.
You hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. Yep.
Yeah, my question has to do with, number one, tracks. Are you allowed to carry on tracks now?
I believe the answer is yes. Don't quote me 100%.
I think that was addressed in a legislative session, but you were just mentioning federal buildings. Does that include their parking lot?
It does not include their parking lot. Well, excuse me, I take that back. For post offices, you cannot have a firearm in your vehicle in a post office parking lot. I don't know if that's true for, say, other typical federal buildings. I believe you're okay.
I think it's their property. I think it is their property, and I think that there's only one. I don't even know if they have provisions in federal law for interstate travel and carrying of a firearm. It has to be in a locked case in your trunk.
It depends on the state, depends on where you're traveling, so you need to get to know the laws or where you're going to. And that's absolutely true for California. If you're going to California...
Well, that would be a separate law from the federal. That would be state laws.
Correct.
that you'd have to be aware of. But federal has a uniform law for carrying a firearm nationwide, but states can be more restrictive than that if they want to.
Correct. Like, for example, I have a brother-in-law who was traveling through New Jersey and New York, and he had his firearm in a locked box that was locked. The magazine was pulled out. There's no ammunition in the box, the magazine, around the gun in any way.
Was it in the trunk?
No, it was in his luggage, so his checked baggage. Problem was, his plane was delayed. When his plane got delayed, it was a overnight delay. They pulled all of his luggage out. He took it. As soon as he collected it, now he had possession of a firearm illegally in the state of New York.
It's ridiculous.
They did not prosecute, but they did take his firearm. And they're like, "You can't have this here." And he goes, "I wouldn't have had my flight stayed on path, and I would, because you forced me to take my luggage, you forced me into a criminal situation." He was able to get out of everything, not have any problems, because it was not intentional, and it wasn't his fault.
That's not always the case, though.
Yeah, there are other people. I mean, he lost his firearm.
Yeah,
his sidearm, and that's
some
sad.
Some crooked SOB in New York ended up with
that's
it.
right.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
So, but you have to be aware where you're going. You have to be aware what the rules and regulations are, and I think it's a great thing to check before you travel.
So if there's been times I've went to the post office and I've been carrying and just unloaded, didn't unload, just took it out of my pocket and put it under my seat, which I found out that's illegal to have it on their property. You got to park them and put and hide it. And the problem this creates is it opens up people's firearms to being stolen.
Absolutely, it creates a lot of problems. Absolutely.
But we've got and another place that I found here. I had to use my concealed permit, the concealed weapon, one time because I had some gangsters living next door to me, and they just kept creating havoc. I called the police and asked them what I should do. They said, "Go write their license plate number," because they'd come around at 3 and 4 in the morning and park up front and play their music really loud and wake everybody up. And so I went out, and they attacked me, and I pulled it on them, and they retreated, but then they come out again. I thought, well, they went in to get a gun, so I went and called 911, and they'd already left by then after they hit me a few times, And the cops came down and says, "Yeah, we've been watching these guys, and we suspect they might try some retribution. So we advise you to take it wherever you go."
Yeah.
I took it everywhere I went except for church.
Yeah, that's good of them to advise you to do that because that's the right answer.
Yeah, and see, and I had a vulnerability. If they knew that I went to church and they caught me going there, they would have their opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I find that intolerable situation for me. I think that the people that are in charge that put this policy in place are hypocrites because they themselves have some of the best security in the nation.
You're absolutely correct.
They're like Mr. Bloomberg, who run around trying to disarm everybody else, but they themselves have it.
Yeah, and one comment I wanted to make to you is if you do feel the need to carry your firearm to church, you need to make that decision. But you could also go to your clergy or your leadership of that church and say, "Hey, you know what? This is the situation. Let me explain this to you."
They've asked me why I don't come, and I've told them why I don't come.
Because you won't let me carry a firearm.
Yes.
Okay. You would think they would be a little more flexible that way, but you still have, the right to. You truly do still have the right to carry that, but you will suffer for the consequences of that.
There's other churches around that don't have that policy, that don't have that hypocrisy.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be addressed in this state.
Absolutely.
And it comes down to choice. It comes down to your own personal choice. You do what you feel is best for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, other people, but see, there's a difference between you doing what's best for you and you being the one that tries to decide what's best for somebody else, too.
Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I think that's
called taking away your agency, and I believe that the plan was that was not supposed to be by the good side.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
You bring up the great question, the great conundrum of our state. Well, really of of the difference between
Our
laws,
existence.
regulations, and our existence.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your call. We
Appreciate the call.
you joining in today.
Thank you much. So, what did you want to say there, Scott?
Oh, I was just going to say, so I think the first and foremost thing we need to jump back to is responsible carry, and you need to vet out each situation. I just looked up what the TRAC's requirement is, just so I can answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
But and it doesn't say. It just says weaponry is not permitted.
Okay.
Well, it's not. It can't be
It's
legislated.
not prohibited, but it's not permitted.
It's not permitted.
Okay.
So, as a concealed weapons permit holder, it doesn't say I
It's
can't.
your choice.
It says it's not permitted. It says it's not lawful to carry illegal. I can't remember the term. It said it was unlawful to carry weapons, illegal weapons.
Illegal weapons.
Illegal
Okay.
weapons.
I'm carrying a legal weapon. Yeah.
There's
I'm
like all
permitted.
these little statutes and rules in there. So
Yeah.
go read it. It's on the utah.gov. Go to the public transportation page and you'll see it there. The URL is really weird with all kinds of characters, so I won't read it off to you. But at the end of the day, do what you feel comfortable with, but make sure you're getting training and that you're learning so that you're more and more comfortable. That's the thing I see most people go without, and that's the biggest problem we have is you don't know how to use or when or where to use your sidearm as a tool and as a resource.
Let's talk about that a little bit more on the other side of the break here. What I wanted to do is I've got this book to give away, Counter Ambush by Rob Pincus. Let's do the first caller after the break. Gets this book, and we'll just leave it here at the station for you. So we're going in another break here, and I want to talk about a little bit more about responsible carry, a little bit more about training and so forth. This hour is sponsored by Survival Medical, the only first aid kit designed for long-term storage. Find out more at survival-medical.com. We'll see you guys on the other side of the break.
Hey, thanks for being with us today. You're listening to Prepper Talk Radio, also known as PrepperCon Radio, here at K-Talk Media. We've got one more question, and then we're going to open up the lines to see who's going to win this book, Counter Ambush by Rob Pincus, who was our guest earlier in the show. Hang on there a second. We're going to bring on our caller. Hey, are you there?
Yes, I want to comment on what the last caller said.
Yes.
I am LDS, and I do disagree with the church gun policy, but I think the person's making a mistake to simply leave the church over that one issue. I mean, unless you disagree, there are so much in the basics that are so beautiful. Why throw out the baby with the bathwater? And that is my comment.
Okay.
That's a great comment. Thank you so much for your call.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And and personally, I agree with you. And I am, of course, LDS as well. I carry everywhere, but I don't carry to church. If I do go during the week, I've made it perfectly clear to my bishop that I am carrying. He does know that. He knows I'm trained. He knows I'm proficient with it. And I think that's really the key. And to get that permission and so I'll just leave it there. I'll end it there. We each need to make our own decisions as to whether we're going to obey the law or we're going to disobey the law, if we're going to be willing to pay those consequences. Now, if we take a situation, oh, look, we got a line ring in there, Scott. This is our winner of our book.
Hey, thanks for calling K-Talk. You are our book winner for Combat Ambush by Rob Pincus.
Who is this? What's your name?
Well, this is Jesse again.
Oh, hey, Jesse.
I wasn't necessarily trying to do that, but I carry at church. Nobody knows.
Yep.
And nobody cares. And unless something really bad happens, they're not going to care about it when it happens anyway. It's a non-issue. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. Wherever I go, it goes.
Yep.
Non-issue.
And I know I agree with you as well. It comes down to personal decision. If that's what you want to do and you feel proficient, I've just made that decision for myself. But it looks like. Thank you, Jesse, for the call. I will.
Before
go ahead,
Jesse. What's your last name so I can put it on the book?
Green.
Green.
Cool. If you come to the K-Talk office, it'll be at the front desk for you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate the call.
Hey, you bet.
We got another caller. Hey, what's your name?
This is Randy again.
Randy.
Hey, Randy.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah, you get caught carrying enough times, you will lose your ability to carry at all.
That's
You're
correct.
aware of that?
That's one of the decisions you need to make.
About taking it into church. But for the fellow that said something about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I have to reply that when good men do nothing, that's how the evil keeps going on. And I consider it an evil for somebody to hypocritically stop somebody else from doing what they themselves do. And I just say that if enough people didn't go because of this policy, they would soon change the policy if it was known that that was why the attendance was down.
You may be right, but
when an organization starts behaving politically, they have to be acted upon politically also.
That's a great point. And I think the more important thing to do is instead of walking away from, your religious beliefs, to talk to your local leadership.
If they get enough flack, they will deal with it because they're a political pressure group too. I know what's happening in Colorado. There's a guy named Carl Chin. He started up a self-defense group for religious people over in Colorado after they had this
I've heard of it.
Church shooting. You don't know how dangerous churches are. They have a lot of attacks in churches. You can go look it up on the internet. This is nationwide, worldwide even. It's probably one of the more dangerous places to be when it comes for these violent acts to take place. And I believe that the fellow over in Colorado had it right, but the mandate that people not carry in church is only applies to Utah. The church policy does not apply outside of anywhere else but here in Utah. And I had a discussion with my bishop about it. He did not believe me.
I'll have to
but
check
he found out later that was a mandate that applied only to Utah.
That's actually not correct. And I'll say this because I grew up in Colorado. So we had the same policy. It's no different. And it does
You're
apply.
wrong. I challenge you. I challenge you.
We'll look into it.
But
I challenge you.
From first-person
because
experience.
I can show that when they enacted this law in Utah, it applied only to Utah. And my discussions with them in Colorado is that this Carl Chin fellow put me in touch with a fellow over in Colorado, and the church allowed people to organize security groups in Colorado, and that was as far as it went. It didn't specify what they could and couldn't do. It is mostly about state law, and state law in Utah is manipulated by this group of people.
We'll have to have everybody look into that personally. We've got a few more things we need to cover that are specific towards carrying in public. But thank you so much for your call, Randy.
Yes, thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. All right, whole bunch of things I wanted to talk about today, and of course, Scott, you have your items as well. So my next question is for you is, do you need to carry a handgun?
I think everyone should carry something. Some people aren't going to be comfortable with or be able to carry a handgun, so I don't recommend it for everybody.
Yeah, I think some people are not truly competent. Sure, could they train and become competent? Sure, possibly, most likely. But can they make the right decisions with the responsibility that it requires to carry concealed? You have a great responsibility, not just for your own defense, and I may be stretching here a bit, but I believe it's also for the defense of others. Correct. That's one of the reasons I carry. So say I'm in the mall, and I'm carrying, and I'm in the right mindset, and something happens. So say someone starts shooting. What are you going to do? Are you going to run away, or are you going to run toward the fire?
I think
you and I have a bit of a difference of opinion on this.
Well, I think the big thing is you need to be smart about what you're doing and protecting who you can from a safe, reasonable scenario. Running to the fire, so to speak, as you said, I think if you're not trained at a very high level, you're committing suicide, and suicide doesn't help anybody. I think if you're trained, and I mean religiously,
you're talking like SWAT trained type.
Yeah. If the shooter's like 15 feet away from you and there's something you can do, absolutely engage. Mm-hmm. Get rid of the threat. As long as it's a safe shooting zone. If there's 20 other people behind him and you're shooting at them,
right,
your percentage of hit ratio is like 7% in a high-stress situation. And that's the 7% number comes from all of the SWAT teams across America. What they've measured in high-stress situations when they've had to pull their gun and draw their weapon and fire, 7% accuracy.
And
so
you may
think, if you think you or anyone else out there who isn't trained at that high level can go into a situation like that and think clearly enough to know what to do, how to do it, you're ridiculously inept in being able to handle that situation without that level of training. So if you think, I'm going to go to the fire and put it out, you're setting yourself up for suicide. If you are trained, okay, then it makes total sense.
Okay, and take this scenario, and I agree with you to an extent there, but let's take this scenario. So say we're back in the mall,
okay,
and your wife is in the mall and you're not there. Would you want someone to step up with their firearm and protect your wife? Now, the fact may be that they may die, but that is a responsibility, the choice you've taken on. Now, your options are, okay, I hear gunfire, which sounds to me like gunfire. I hear pops. Am I going to run the other opposite direction, or am I going to try and learn more about the situation?
I think always try and learn more. I think always look quickly at your surroundings and analyze your situation where you are. Get as many people out of harm's way as possible first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Always.
So don't just run.
Don't just run away. I think that's cowardly and stupid.
Yes.
But don't just run into the fire either. And that's what it sounded like your response is I'm running to the fire to fix this. Well, you don't know, first of all, how big the fire is. And if you're running to a 5-alarm fire with a bucket of water, you're not going to fix anything, right? And that's really what you're doing if you don't know the situation. If you can assess the situation smartly, and if you got a place of cover you can peer from to see what's going on, get to that first.
There are an awful lot of variables, and like you say,
there's so many
it
variables.
takes a lot of training to recognize those variables.
Oh, there's gunfire, I'm going to go help.
Right.
That your first response right there is a suicidal thought. And I think there's far too many people that think, if something happens, I'm going to go be able to, if a terrorist attack happens, I can go take them out. I've got my handgun. 7% accuracy in a high-stress situation for professionally trained responders.
So that's a choice you need to make. Okay, am I trained well enough? Do I feel confident enough to where I can move closer to the situation? If there's something I can do, then I can take action. I can take the shot.
See, I'm as a concealed carry permit holder, as someone who regularly carries, I'm more concerned with all the other concealed carriers than I am with the thugs.
Okay.
Because a concealed carrier, 9 times out of 10, isn't going to take the time to assess the situation before they respond with gunshot, right? That's the problem we have with a lot of the concealed carriers is they think, I've got a gun, it's my responsibility to put down the threat.
But also keep this in mind. I think a lot of people who have their concealed carry permits don't honestly carry that often. They're not carrying 24/7 like you and me. So, excuse me. So, one thing I think we all need to take into account is that the gun is the last option.
Number 1, get to safety. Number 2, if you can de-escalate, de-escalate.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, once you get into a situation and it's past de-escalation and you have a clear shot and you have no collateral damage that can happen from your shot, then act on it. But this hero bravado that a lot of people tell me, I'm going to go take him out.
And you're absolutely right. If it is that bravado, if you are wanting to be the hero, I'm looking for a chance.
Well,
I'm looking for an opportunity.
I don't even care if they want to be the hero or not. If anyone thinks that they legitimately have a chance to go into an area they haven't been there, maybe they haven't seen the shooter, to go into that area and do something, and they're not trained at a high level, they're cannon fodder basically.
Okay, well this is my belief.
Okay.
If you carry, you have an obligation to run toward the fire. Because and so that obligation means you have an obligation to train yourself, you have an obligation to carry an extra magazine, you have an obligation to know what you're doing. Otherwise, don't carry. However, there's other arguments to be said there as well.
Okay. So
do you understand what I'm saying? You know where I'm coming from there?
Right.
If you're going to carry, you have that obligation.
As soon as you have a firearm, it's your responsibility to take care of everybody within gunshot.
Yes.
Okay. Now, sniper rifle can shoot hundreds of yards. Is it your responsibility to cover and take care of somebody hundreds of yards away with a handgun? There's your first flaw in that argument. Okay.
I don't think that's a flaw, though. That's
Secondly,
that's
it's a major
situational.
flaw. It's you can't. Anything you do has zero impact on the outcome. What you need to think about is what can I reasonably do and safely do to decrease harm as much as possible.
But you also have to think in that stressful situation.
Okay.
Reason goes out the window.
Because you're not running to put out a fire. We can't use that analogy. In all fairness, it's apples and oranges. You're running into a live fire situation.
And obviously, if the sniper is a couple hundred yards away, there's pretty obvious there's nothing I can do about that other than get other people to safety.
Get everybody out. Be a voice. Number one, be a voice. Assess the situation. Be a voice. Get people to safety. Number two, if you're in a position where you can't get out of there, find cover. If you can't find cover, then look at your opportunities. Make sure you're not shooting into a large mass of people. Make sure you're not running into a live fire scenario.
There's so many variables.
Make sure you're thinking, what can I do? How can I get to this person if I have to? If I absolutely have to, how do I get to that person and take them out? If I can just fire off a shot into the air and that'll deter that person, that's your first opportunity to get them thinking, whoa, I'm not the only one here.
And see, that's why we had Rob on earlier today, because he provides this kind of training. This counter ambush, this is a fantastic read for this exact situations. And if you're not willing to make those types of decisions, maybe you shouldn't be carrying. Or maybe you just make sure, okay, I am running away at this point.
You need to be willing, but you don't need to run headlong into an unknown situation. That's the logic behind of what my argument is. Make sure you're aware of what you're getting yourself into before you start running into it. Because you run around a corner, maybe they've got automatic weaponry and they're taking you down.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, be smart. Make sure you understand the laws in your area. Make sure that you are carrying by the law. It is our right. So, reminder, thanks for listening to K-Talk. We are brought to you by Survival Medical. These guys have cracked the code in long-term medical care and keeping your gear fresh, even 20 years later. So, check them out, survival-medical.com. You're listening to K-Talk.
See you next week.
Today, we're grabbing a few Bud Lights to talk